All right, welcome everyone to the Within the Margin podcast, where we speak to authors and more across the globe to speak more about their inspirations and what the tiny little details about their books, parenting, life, and just everything in between. Within the Margin is a proud member of the Daydreaming Network, where stories come to life. Today, we're sitting down with an amazing author who has a wonderful mission. His name is David DeLisle. He is a speaker, the founder of The Awesome Stuff, and the author of The Golden Quest, which we are going to talk about today, which is also going to premiere on our The Daydreaming Kids podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, this is going to be a fun one. So tell us more about your background, real quick, and then kind of what led you up to this point.
Yeah. So for me, I was always a bit of a money nerd. So I read finance books when I was in grade 6, and loved this stuff. And I've got 2 young boys. So as they got older, I started realizing I want to sort of pass on some financial knowledge to them, and that's what led me to writing this book, the Golden Quest. Because I realized, I'm a money nerd, but I realized most people aren't. You mentioned that your dad was a CPA. I'm guessing, though, he bored you to death with his conversations, because I find that when I start talking to people. So yeah, that's really what led me to this, is how do we make this fun so kids can learn it, and it's something that's accessible for everyone. Because I think that's the thing, is financial literacy, just those words, financial literacy, sounds so heavy. It sounds like it's going to be a math, some math problem. Yes. And this lecture, and it doesn't have to be that way.
Well, that was a crazy part, because when your book was first introduced to me, it's not a children's book, as we talked about. It's a graphic novel, and it is an adventure. Like you're sending your character on such a wild adventure. What led you to taking that approach? I guess when you first started, because of course with that idea of financial literacy, we'll get more into this in this conversation about having that conversation with kids about financial literacy. How did you come up with this crazy idea of this elaborate story to have this conversation?
Yeah, I love that question. And that's where, especially if you've got like aspiring writers and authors on the podcast listening in, it's just picking up that inspiration of being open. Because for me, again, I have 2 young boys and I'm a dad. So they were going to get this information however it was going to come. And it was going to come in just a boring list of like, do these things.
Exactly.
And I knew they wouldn't love it. And so that was in the back of my mind, but that's the direction I was going anyway. And then I remember being in their library at their school. I was volunteering one day and watching all the kids reading these graphic novels and how excited they were getting. And it was just this instant realization of, hey, this can be so fun. The lessons can be these really fun, things passed down like a hero's journey, classic hero's journey. And it doesn't have to be heavy, and it can be fun. And once I saw that, the inspiration came pretty quick. And I got really excited as well, because there's not really any books out there that teach finance in a graphic novel format, which I find it's crazy. It doesn't exist, but it was really fun to write. And the concept came quick once I just saw the joy of kids reading these graphic novels.
Oh, that's awesome. Because it was kind of crazy, the idea, because I have 3 young ones, and then of course trying to figure out like teaching them how things just, that concept as they're getting older and addressing that. Because one of the great lessons that you're taught, not to do too much of a spoiler, but one of the quotes that comes up in your book is, it's important to teach the children so you don't have to teach the adults. And you think about that, and you think about how many parents kind of struggle with that, like with, even that concept of financial literacy, and how many problems can be solved in the front end by just having that basic knowledge. Because nothing that you're going over is tremendously complicated. It just needs to be enforced.
For sure. And not only is it not complicated, people sometimes hear it, like you said, it's not a children's book, it's a graphic novel. And it is a little bit different, because people, when they hear it, they think all of this is just for kids, and it's just simple stuff, savings and piggy banks and lemonade stands. But it's not. Like, it's one of those things where my sort of secret mission and wish with this is that the kids will teach the parents, because they're lessons that we should learn as parents, and we just never were taught. Like they're all the basic sort of mindset and habit pieces that make financial literacy something that isn't this big taboo, scary word that most of us struggle with. So really, it's this thing that sort of I'm getting the kids to teach it, because kids, I mean, they just learn so much quicker because they still have that curiosity and that enthusiasm, and they don't reject new ideas and new concepts. So I find teaching the kids, they learn really fast, and then they can keep, nudging their parents towards better financial habits.
That's wonderful. So you mentioned the word taboo. So why do you think that this conversation makes, because I think what's great about what your book does, it creates it's an accessible way to have the conversation. So why do you think it is so taboo? Why do people, even when some adults, like I know I have friends who, we're not great with money, and they don't want to talk about it. So why do you think it makes people so uncomfortable?
So because we tie so much emotion into money. So money's just a tool. Like it's not any emotion we attach to it. That's on us. But we learn that. We learn that from our family. We learn it from our parents. We learn it from our peers. And so there's so much just shame and jealousy, and we also start ranking people by how much they have or how little they have, and we judge. And so it just becomes this really emotional thing where we feel insecure. And we're also taught, don't talk about money. Don't tell people how much you have. Don't tell, how much these things cost. If you give a gift, I'm not going to say like, hey, Benjamin, I just bought this for you. It cost $100. Like we don't do that.
Exactly.
And some of it makes sense. Like we don't want to make people feel bad about money and always talk about the cost of things. But what happens is we take that into our parenting as well. So our kids within our inner circle, where maybe we can be a little bit more open, never really learn the cost of things, and we never have these conversations. They don't know how much like mommy and daddy make it work, or how much the house costs, or how much debt you have. Like we just don't ever talk about it. And if it's one of those things that we never talk about, and it always just sort of stays in the shadows, we can't get over it. I think of like Brene Brown around shame and trying to bring it out of the shadows. We don't do that with money. And it's funny because we've brought almost everything else out of the shadows, but money's one of those things we still don't talk about.
It's very interesting. It's funny you say that, how kids don't really know. Because I remember as I grew up, even though my dad's CPA and he taught me some stuff, like he taught me a lot, but the idea that as I got into my 20s and he started teaching, he started really getting a little more in detail about it. I was like, whoa, like kind of, even though they're simple stuff, but how thoughtful it was about like plans. He made plans, literally decades ago in preparation for, going to college, like me going to college, all of our, like how, setting me and my brother up for, getting us, out of the house. And so we won't come back to the house also. like I taught you everything you need to know. Now go. So I think that's a crazy, I just love that concept of, bringing it out of the shadows and bringing that conversation. And what would you say to the parent who, to them it is uncomfortable? So what would you say to that parent who's like a little more nervous about having that conversation and start opening up?
Yeah, as a parent, kids love when you're vulnerable and tell them that you're uncomfortable. I mean, I do mine do anyway. I got two boys, so
Yes.
Those guys love when I like, oh, you don't know this? You're not good at this? You can't sing, Dad?
Oh,
They
they
love
love
it. So I mean, if they're feeling that, just letting them know that doesn't hurt. But it can be so much simpler. And so talking about like bringing us out of the shadows, it doesn't have to be this big conversation where, you sit down and say, okay, here's my 10-year, 20-year plan. This is what I'm planning on for college. It could be as simple as, hey, we're going out for burgers. This is how much it costs. And again, make sure that you don't roll it in with feel guilty and be really good because this is how expensive it is. No, just as information. So they start understanding how much things cost, what you're spending. Because I like a common thing for parents is like these kids don't appreciate it. They don't understand the value of money. I just spent all this money and they don't appreciate it all. They don't know that you spent all that money. They don't know how much you spent.
Exactly.
And so just keeping it simple, and it doesn't have to be always there, but if they know, like, oh, you want this ice cream, this is how much it costs. Just they know, oh, that teddy bear costs this. And they just start getting a bit of an idea. And obviously, as the children get older, you can have deeper conversations. But those conversations really help. So they at least understand how much you're spending. And then along with that, like, especially if they're like, why are you spending so much? They can say, like, this is why, like, spending money on your school is important to me. This trip is important to me. I really want you to have this bike for these reasons. Like once they start understanding, we're really forming their spending habits and how they view money. And we don't even realize it. So even when we don't, if you ask, what do these parents do that feel uncomfortable about it? They're teaching their kids. They might not
Yeah.
realize they're teaching their kids, but they are teaching their kids. And they might just be teaching their kids, don't talk about money, be scared of it, and be uncomfortable about it. So have those conversations.
But that's such a wonderful concept because, when they're young, they're sponges. They just pick up on everything. And the idea of keeping money in the dark and not having that conversation, it remains in that scary land that, we don't talk about it. It's the monster under the bed. And bringing that out, there's so much more because they'll pick up. And I've realized like my 6-year-old loves math. And so she loves knowing how everything counts. And she just loves that concept. So money is a way that we're actually able to have that conversation just because she just really likes to talk about it. And she's 6. And the idea that she's able to, I hope that she grows up and she's not concerned about it. She's not something that we can always talk about. It's, it just kind of flows. And so it's one less thing for them to worry about. Just like we teach kids empathy and just like we teach kids to be kind to others, teaching kids basic financial literacy in a very fun way that the Golden Quest does. Because again, while they're learning financial literacy, we're on asteroid belt. We go to a farm, we go to a cave, you send them everywhere. But it's just a nice way of almost unlocking that conversation.
For sure. And like you said, like when you're talking about your daughter, you could see how there's going to be an ease on how she thinks about money. But none of that includes talking about stock markets or real estate investing or, these 10-year plans or not spending any money and being really careful. It's just a comfort with the conversation. And so that's
Exactly.
really what I'm trying to do is get the conversation about the money out there and have us just be a bit more aware. Like I talk about money mindfulness because this pausing and thinking about money is so important to me. And it's just not ever talked about. Like even from financial experts, typically it's, hey, David, how do I have more money? Teach me how to have more money. And that's the entire
Exactly.
conversation. But really it's our relationship with money and how we think about it that should be the first lesson. And that's something we can start teaching our kids at an early age before they understand math concepts, before they understand all these other things, just getting them so they understand like money isn't this big, scary thing to be, to be afraid of. And it opens up some awesome conversations because then you can
Yeah.
start talking about, priorities and values because that's really what money is all these things that are important to you. We could spend it on anything. Dad, why are you spending it on this? That's a really good conversation.
Exactly. And because the concept that money is a tool is a really eye-opening concept for people. A lot of times money is you know, that relationship and understanding that what I spend my money on is what I most care about. If you spend money in a particular way that hamstrings you for doing things that you don't want to do, it hamstrings you to where you can't do certain things. Well, then all of a sudden, being able to have that conversation and be able to break it down does allow you to start reprioritizing or kind of just look at it with a fresh set of eyes. It's such an important, I love that concept. So the one crazy awesome thing that you put in there is with prioritizing. And I love the idea that you added giving into your lesson, not to do a spoiler alert, but I just love the concept about that, the idea of giving and no one goes poor from giving. And I just love how this isn't about, hey, this is how in the book, you're not like, hey, for this, I'm going to be it's the kid's not learning how to be a millionaire. He's learning how to prioritize his life to where he's living a fulfilling life. Some would say the awesome stuff. And so I just kind of expand on that of why that's so important of all that kind of concept within financial literacy.
Yeah, so I tried to wrap the lessons with like habits and mindset. So like we talked about some of these basic mindset pieces, and that's sort of one of the final lessons is this idea of giving, because as I mentioned, like we're so focused on having to have more that we forget that some of these things like giving actually makes us richer. And I also found like it's a very common concept to talk about charity and giving to young kids. And I see that in my kids with their school, but it feels like the lesson itself is a little bit broken because it's just sort of like, hey, we're fortunate, let's give to the less fortunate. So it's almost like this, not quite a power dynamic, but it's, there's just an energy to it that I don't really appreciate, because it's the reason you're giving isn't because always, these people need it and these poor people, I'm going to help them. There's, you just, if you have a giving nature, you can just integrate that into everything and it will come back. So I want to show how giving isn't this one way transactional thing. It'll come back and make you richer. So as you said, that quote, nobody's ever become poor from giving. I just love that encapsulates it. So these kids aren't thinking like, look at me. They're thinking, look, I can give. And a beautiful thing with that, because again, this is all about mindset and money. I had a young boy send me an email talking about, taking some clothes to, a shelter. And on the way to drop off the clothes, stumbled upon 2 pennies. And this is a young little boy. So he's telling me like, I'm already richer. I didn't even give the thing, and money was already coming back to me and I'm richer, and was so excited. And you could just feel that enthusiasm. And I mean, and that's where teaching the kids so they can teach the adults. As an adult, we might just 2 pennies and think nothing of it. This little child now views the world where the more he gives, the more that'll come back. And you can just see how that'll change the way he views the world and the trajectory of his life. So for me, that was a really important concept to sort of lay out so kids could just see the power of giving.
I love the idea you said, the energy behind giving. And I think that's very important. Like the idea of like, we're not taking off, hey, this is all I have extra. This is like, because you're not like, hey, I saved too much this week, so I'm going to give that energy behind giving, and not necessarily having, yes, you have an extra, you want to give, and then, the world tends to give back to you, but there's not some sort of expectation. There wasn't, hey, I'm going to go do the clothes and then I'm going to get 2 pennies on the ground. There's this, I'm going to do it because it's the right thing. And then if the world, that energy that you're releasing out to the world has a tendency of coming back. And I just think that's a very powerful that message, that if the next generation and the many generations to come, if that's what's passed down, that right there makes a significant impact on life and the world itself.
For sure. I mean, like I said, like some of these things that come back, I get chills. So that was one where I got chills when I heard from that little boy. And it really does have the impact to start changing the world. And it doesn't have to, I talk about it in the book too, it doesn't have to be giving of money. It could be giving of time and kindness and all these things. And back to this idea of like mindset, if you're in the habit of giving and being generous and kind, it's really hard to feel, poor and lack and all these other things that we usually attach to money. So that was important to me as well. Like the whole book's a journey to a richer life. It's not, do all these things and give all your things away and have nothing and be a minimalist. It's no, how do you have a richer life? And this is a part of it. It's hard to be in that state of feeling just, hard done by or poor or unhappy or stressed about money when you're helping others, and then that will reciprocate and they'll help you, and we live in a much more beautiful world when that happens.
So I love that. So the concept of a rich life, I think I love the movement that's kind of happening, because obviously you're the founder of the Awesome Stuff. So what is some of the stuff that you do with the Awesome Stuff? So like with your, outside of the book, with your organization, with the Awesome Stuff, tell us more about kind of how you interact, and maybe a little sneak peek of what the Awesome Stuff might be.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you a little bit a sneak peek, the cliff notes around it, because this is where I get most passionate. And so the Awesome Stuff is really understanding what's important to you. And as you know in the book, like it's one of those things where we all think we know what's most important, but usually our actions don't match our values or what we consider most important. So it's really just becoming more aware of what are the things you love, and it might be experiences, it might be that a gift from someone else, it could be all those things, but what are the things that mean the most to you, and then using that as a bit of a benchmark when you're making these financial decisions and where you're gonna spend your time and money. And that comes into that money mindfulness, that pausing and reflecting, like, what is your awesome stuff? And then once you understand that, then all of a sudden you can use that as a foundation for your decision. So if I take a simple story, like especially for the parents listening, and go back to like an ice cream example where a kid wants an ice cream. So if we don't want to get that kid the ice cream, usually we say we can't afford it or it's too expensive. And so that teaches our kids something. And it's probably not what we want to be teaching them, because all of a sudden they're thinking we can't afford that ice cream, or I'm not good enough to have the ice cream. And this idea of the awesome stuff, if you've had the conversation with a child and they already know this idea of the awesome stuff and what's really important to them, you can ask them, is that your awesome stuff? And then that child can pause and just reflect and just think, is this really what I want? Or is it that teddy bear I was talking about? Or do I want to go with my friends swimming or ice skating? What is my awesome stuff? And posing it to them, and they can make that decision. And it doesn't matter if they then say, I want the ice cream or not. It's that pause that really has the power, because they've really thought about what is important to them. And it's changed that whole dynamic. So that same child, if they don't get the ice cream, they're not thinking, oh, temper tantrum, my parents won't get it and I'm not worth it, and it's too expensive. They're thinking, no, they've got this autonomy and empowerment. This is not what's important to me. Going ice skating later today with my friends, that's what's really important. And so it really changes that conversation. And in doing so, and this is why it's so important to me, it sounds small, but if you think of this endless chase that we have for more, this is how we break that. Because instead of just looking around like as children and everything that my parents will buy me, I want. And that's all the game is. It's like, will you buy me this? Will you buy me this? Will you buy me this? That's how we grow up as adults. It changes that to what's really important to you. And we stop that endless chase. And that's really what my mission is breaking that cycle of endlessly chasing more. And this, even though it sounds simple, that this has the power to do that.
It's such a great way of rephrasing the question. It's just you're slightly rewiring how a child is perceiving the question. And just that simple way of doing it, because I will be honest, I have many a times that that ice cream's too expensive, or we have already spent so much money, we can't do that. Like that way of giving them the option of saying, like, hey, let them process the information. Hey, is this the awesome stuff? And that's a way to. It sounds like such a healthier way of having that conversation, and it allows them to, like you said, the autonomy. It allows them to work it out themselves, because they are smart enough to where they can process that information. I just love that rewiring. I just think that's a wonderful way of rephrasing the question.
And they can push that back on the parents as well. So this isn't for kids. I mean, it is for kids because they learn faster than the adults. But this can come back to, like, when you're buying something, like, Dad, is that your awesome stuff? Is this really what you like? Or as a family, this is our awesome stuff. And you start having those conversations, because you'll start to realize, someone will say, oh, I wish I had more time with my kids. I want to travel. I want to do this. And then their spending habits are doing the exact opposite. So what is your awesome stuff? What is the thing that's important to you? And once you understand that, and again, without judgment, like, that's the trick as adults, and especially as parents, it's hard not to judge. I mean, come on, another ice cream, you just had two, or whatever it might be. But if we can do it without judgment and just allow them to start making some of these, these decisions, especially as the children get older, it really will change their relationship with money, and it'll change the way they go through the world, because they won't be looking at all the things their friends have and wishing they had it, because you know what's important to you. And so it gets rid of that jealousy and envy and lack and all these other negative emotions that come around with money. It's pretty powerful.
Well, there's probably a ton of parents out there who just spent a lot of money on Christmas, and now all of a sudden it's the end of January, and now they're like, hey, we want, the kids are like wanting more toys but we had just bought a bunch of stuff for Christmas. So what are we, it's never, that's always a good time to have this conversation, because, my house is just, we have 3 kids, 6, 4, and 2, and it is just, there's so many toys. So it's such, I just, and that concept of with the parents, having a parent ask you what you're like, you're looking internally and saying like, you can imagine how fulfilling it would be with, if you, just the parents being like, hey, what's our awesome stuff? How can we reorient our life a little bit to where we can spend more time with the kids? If you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're spending a lot of time, a lot of money on the credit card, that might be what ways can we start altering that to where we don't have to, we're not stressed and where we can have a little more relaxing environment or just whatever. Because again, it's your awesome stuff. So I just love the way that's rephrased. I think it's just so great.
Yeah. Well, and because we just got through the holidays, so with my boys, I just had that conversation with them because typically that would be exactly, we'd have all these things and all this stuff. And this year there wasn't really much they wanted. I still like, we always know the things we can get them. I could fill a tree easily with, little trinkets and things, and they'd be happy. And I told them that. I'm like, I sort of know what I can get you. And I even gave them some ideas. Like, these are some of the things that I'd probably be thinking, but there's nothing they really wanted. So I talked to them. I'm like, hey, instead of doing that this year, what if I hosted you each your own holiday party? Because they're 11 and 14. The one just
Okay.
started middle school, one just started high school, and they love that. So I actually didn't get them presents this year. I hosted them a party. We invited all their friends and separate parties because, I mean,
Yes.
they're siblings. They don't want to share parties.
No,
So,
no.
exactly. So separate parties, but it was great. So they invited their friends. They sent out the invite. We ordered food. We went to the store and picked all the, candy and treats and things they wanted. And they had this big holiday party, and that was their present. And it was just a different experience for them, and they loved it. And yeah, when it comes to it, I mean, I probably spent almost as much as I might have spent on presents, or somewhat anyway. But it was something that was an experience they were to do. They loved it. It wasn't just more things that is going to fill a room and go under a bed and never be looked at. This was something they were able to do in a memory, and all their friends running around. It was, once we start pausing and reflecting on what we're really doing, we can really have these better conversations. And it is so fun. And just ask them, like, what do you want to do? We say we want to spend more time with the kids, but we spend the money on things. Hey, instead of, what if we all, went skiing instead of, buying the presents? Like, what would you like to spend time as a family, or went to our favorite restaurant? Like, kids, that's the thing, is kids really, they're enthusiastic and they're open, and they don't need the things. It's just, that's all they know. Like, they're taught, if you whine and complain and bug me enough, I'll buy you the thing. And that's what you're supposed to do. But as soon as we start saying, hey, why don't we do this instead? Or what do you really want? They're not used to that question.
Exactly. I remember my wife, we were doing like when I think it was like 2 years ago. I think we did the whole like, okay, we got 3 kids, big Christmas, let's go for it. And we got to lunchtime on Christmas, and we were like, and she's like, I didn't like that at all. Like, it just looks like the house always looks. There's just a bunch of toys. And so this year we actually went to, we went to the Great Wolf Lodge, which is like this kids theme park, which is like a water park.
Yeah.
Like, we went for a night. The kids had you could tell we were like just striking the right chord with them, because Christmas, like, yes, we still had a couple things Christmas morning to open up, but the idea of, hey, we're going to go do this thing right around that time. And it was, you could tell, because really a lot of times what they want is they just want to hang out with you. They want to be with you. They want you to, take the time, chisel away. And, of course, at a water park, the phones are you can't bring your phone out there. So it was just it was amazing just having that time with each other. And, it was, truly the awesome stuff.
Yeah, no, I love that. And then I mean, your kids are still a little young, but as they get older, this is again where you integrate little things like, oh, okay, this is, that toy you wanted would have cost this. This costs this. I think this is a better choice of where we spend our money. And
Exactly.
they can start understanding that. Because that's, again, like, most kids, it would blow their mind how expensive going to like a water park like that is. They just don't know. So as they get older, you start letting them know, hey, this is expensive, but we love it. It's you could just take that lesson a little further and bring them in on it. Or instead of this, would you rather, go to the movies for the next, every weekend for the next month? And you start you know.
Just that's such a great way. That's awesome. So yeah, so as we're going into 2024, you want to start, how what would you say is if parents want their to start bringing their families into this conversation and start rewiring how their family looks at money and their kids, how would you phrase is a great place to start for them this coming year?
Yeah, so for me, and moving into this year, it's really important to me. I'm posing to parents and kids this 7-day awesome stuff challenge. And all you have to do for 7 days, every time you're looking to buy something, just pause and just ask yourself, is this the awesome stuff? And you'll see that it'll really change the way you think about your purchases and your priorities and what's really important to you. And that 7-day challenge, if I almost guarantee if you do that for 7 days, it'll start developing that habit and you'll realize the way you view and think about money and your choices, it's going to completely change. And it makes a really fun conversation with the kids. So with that as well, once you finish the 7-day challenge, reach out to me. Let me know, what how you feel, what changed, what you realize your awesome stuff is, or better yet, have some kids tell me what their awesome stuff is. I love those kinds of conversations. So yeah, just that's it. It's as simple as that. 7 days going to the new year. Every time you're looking to purchase something big, just pause and ask yourself, is this the awesome stuff?
That is so great. And all the links to your Instagram, your website will all be in the show notes below. So, we'll feel free, anyone who's listening to this, check it out. It's such a wonderful mission that you have because it's the impact can be so big if done correctly. Just beginning the conversation. Any incremental improvement for everybody is I just think so. That's amazing that you're doing this.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, the incremental, don't beat yourself up. I buy stuff all the time that I realize that is not the awesome stuff. And that's part of it. Like this is a journey. Like this isn't all of a sudden I'm going to reach, the pinnacle and be perfect with all my purchases. It's this just constantly just being a bit more mindful, and you'll realize like the kids will buy something and they're like, you know what, Dad, I thought I'd love this, but this thing sucks. I don't like it. And that's a lesson. And especially as parents too, if we could tell them, yeah, you know what, I just bought this purse, or this shirt was on sale and I never wear it, or, let them know as well. So you could see that there's a bit of reflection to it, and it's just being more mindful. So
that's great. Yes, you're not going to read the Golden Quest to be a perfect financial advisor. It just be that wonderful beginning of the conversation that I think the journey that can send families on is let's go with the word priceless. So that's awesome. Thank you so much. Oh, well, David, thank you so much for joining me today. I just unbelievably appreciate it. I just think your mission's so great. And I just thank you so much and look forward to seeing more of what you have in store.
Yeah, thanks so much. And yeah, I can't wait for the listeners too to listen to, like you said, on the Daydream podcast, the book itself and hear it narrated. I'm so excited for that. So
that's awesome.
Thanks so much.
I appreciate it. You have a great one.
You too. Thank you.